Alrighty, everybody, thanks for tuning into my presentation. Sorry, I'm doing this on my phone because Kaltura Capture just does not work on my laptop. I've tried several times, so please bear with me. Alright, so for the topic of my presentation, I chose to focus on aviation emissions. So a quick overview. We'll first talk about what the issue is. Then we'll talk about why the issue exists and what its history is. Following that, we will move on to why this is the most important issue among all the other issues we discussed throughout this course. And then we'll discuss what can be done to fix this issue. And then we'll close things off with what I would have changed to prevent this issue from occurring altogether. So first off, what is this issue? So the aviation industry produces extreme amounts of greenhouse gases, primarily in the form of CO2. This is wrecking our planet and is causing a lot of environmental catastrophes, such as the ice caps melting. We've seen a lot of increase in forest fires, drying out, stuff like that. The environment's just kind of really messed up right now. And that's primarily happening because of greenhouse gases. A couple of numbers for you guys. So the aviation industry accounts for 2.5% of all the CO2 emissions produced worldwide. That's a huge amount, and is really concerning. It generates 0.4 pounds of CO2 per passenger flown per mile. So those are, again, staggering figures of the amount of emissions that the aviation industry puts out. And this is really an ethical problem because there are other forms of transportation available. And in light of that, the aviation industry can be considered needlessly wasteful. So why the issue exists and its history. So essentially it all boils down to the burning of fossil fuels it produces greenhouse gases. Our species is extremely dependent on fossil fuels for pretty much everything, for example, energy generation, telecommunications, pretty much everything we do burns fossil fuels. And humanity's combined consumption of fossil fuels has put us on the tipping point. Something really needs to change soon, otherwise things are gonna get worse drastically and really quickly. Surprisingly or not, the aviation industry has always been proactive in its emissions control. So right as it started expanding after World War II, primarily since the 1960s, the industry has grown in its emissions by around 7-fold, but at the same time, its air traffic volumes have grown even more. So that shows that the aviation industry is really responsible with its emission control. It's been improving really well as it grows. A couple of numbers for you. So in 2018, it was measured that 125 grams of CO2 were produced per RPK, and that's compared to 875 grams in 1960. So yeah, as we see, the aviation industry is really committed to having an environmentally friendly industry, and it's been improving things consistently as it continues to grow. The aviation industry is committed to reduce emissions in the future. I believe that in the year 2050, they actually have plans to be carbon neutral, which is awesome. And they've outlined a couple ways they plan on doing this. The first of these is through technological improvements, so improving their engines, making them more efficient, finding alternate means of propulsion, stuff like that. They also plan on doing this through aircraft design and capacity improvement, so making aircraft able to fit more people and stuff like that to make it a little bit more efficient. And then also operational refinements, helping airports taxi faster, reducing like layover time, stuff like that. Just stuff to improve efficiency through operational refinements. So why is this the most important issue? Well, I think it's the most important issue for 3 main reasons. The first is that it has the highest consequences out of all of the other issues we talked about so far. If we look back on one of the issues, say the lowering the pilot age, Yes, that does impact some people and puts them out of work, but its consequences are not nearly the same as the environmental consequences that will affect all of humanity and completely change our planet based on the amount of emissions we're putting out. The next point is that these effects are irreversible, largely. Once it gets screwed up, the environment is really hard to bring back to a healthy state. That takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and we're not really sure how to do it even. And this brings us to our next point, that this is time sensitive. In order to prevent these catastrophic changes from occurring, we need to get on it now. And yeah. So what can be done to fix this problem? Well, first off, we need to reduce emissions. The aviation industry has, as we discussed about earlier, outlined a whole bunch of ways that they plan on doing that. Regardless of how good the industry gets, there will always be emissions, and that's why it's important to have offset programs, which will allow the aviation industry to make up for those emissions by spending on other environmentally friendly programs to make up for the damage that they do. And then finally, people need to be responsible about the method of travel they choose. Flying is not always going to be the best. Maybe sometimes taking the train will be better, or driving or riding a bike or whatever. People need to be responsible with their choices, and that'll help improve the situation. What would I have done to change and prevent this issue from ever happening? Number one, decrease humanity's reliance on fossil fuel burning. I think that shifting the energy sector away from coal and natural gas burning in favor of stuff like nuclear and other green sources of energy would go a long way to fix the problem. The energy sector is the single largest polluting body in the world, and it accounts for like more than half of all the emissions produced. And I think that if we made this change, it would allow the aviation industry more time for its technological improvements to occur and reduce its impact on the world. But yeah, that's it for my presentation. Here's a list of my references, and thank you guys for tuning in. See ya.